This is exciting tonight. I'm very, very excited about this, ladies. Thank you for coming.
Well, we're happy to be here.
I've been a fan since, yes, the early 80s, mid 80s, when I lived downtown the East Village and I saw all your posters all plastered all over the place.
Yeah.
So this is very, very exciting. Little bit of history about the Guerrilla Girls. They start in 1985 is when they start becoming who they are, the Gorillas. And they do it out of, there was a show at the Museum of Modern Art in 1985 called an International Survey of Painting and Sculpture. 169 artists in this international show. 13 were women, 0 were people of color. So this gets your attention, and then you start your activism. So let's start with that. How does the Guerrilla Girls form? How did you all get started? I know, Alice, you were one of the first original Guerrilla Girls.
Well, I was one of the first members that were invited. There were 7 founding members. And yes, I was in the beginning, the first meeting that we had. Can you hear me?
Because everyone can hear her? Okay.
Yeah, which was in 1985. And at that time, we really didn't have a name yet or any idea. But when the show happened, it was a lot of talk about what was happening, the discrimination that was going on, and that just was the straw that broke the camel's back. So we all had it. That was enough. We didn't know what we were going to do, how we were going to do it, but we decided to, a group of us get together, and so I was invited to the first meeting of 7 women who started.
So there's 7 women who started, and tell us, how did you get to that first meeting?
I asked if I would be interested in doing this. I said, of course. And they actually blindfolded me and took me to a loft, whose loft I know is now. And when I got there, it was very exciting and mysterious. And when I got there, I knew everybody that was there. It was just a small group of us. It was just, a handful.
By the time that I started, it was bigger. It was a couple of years later. And the reason why I joined was because my partner actually was had been invited to join, but she does not like going to meetings. So, because there is, Guerrilla Girls, we had to work. We would meet and we would, hash out these ideas. But I remember the first Guerrilla Girl meeting I went to. It was a big loft on Broadway. And I walked into this room and it was just all these women, and it was pretty serious. And I didn't really know that many people, but it was, this really intense energy. Of because what had happened with the things like the MoMA show was that, suddenly all those problems women had about not being frustrated about not being able to show their work or not having, careers, it became like, wait a second, there's a systemic problem, and that's what we identified as Guerrilla Girls.
So you start by putting posters and everything all Manhattan, because I remember the posters being...
We did everything. There was no computer back then, so we just really sketched everything out and would work in groups. And
Put the microphone up closer.
Can you hear me?
I know it's hard with the mask on.
I'll put my teeth up. And we work in groups, and we come with some ideas that were really pressing, and we would just hash things out. And then there's no computer, so we used press type. If you remember press type.
Yes, I
Yeah.
do. Like the letter sets.
Yeah. And then we would bring it to this place that did the printing. And then the fun part was postering in the middle of the night. So we did paste and buckets. And we used to poster in Soho because that's where all the galleries were, on the doors and the walls. And we used to get chased all the time from the cops would come and chase us away. But then we'd still come back. And one day they said, the same cop said, we really like what you're doing. Can you just do this a few blocks down so it's off our beat? So then we were able to really, post the streets.
Back to this idea of not having the pre-computers. We used to go to the library. We go to the New York Public Library and look at and go through microfilms and see what newspapers had ads for women.
Yeah.
You just went through it and you realized that these galleries would put these ads in, these reviews, and they were actually collected statistics in the beginning.
We would get numbers. We got the numbers from.
I want to get up Dear Artist.
Yeah.
If we can get that one image up, and we'll get that up in a
Yeah.
second.
How we got the numbers and statistics, we knew there was a problem, but we knew we had to, really show it in a way that was real, to get the real numbers behind it. And we wanted to make it feminism sexy and funny again, so people would like to see it. So we actually would take the annual reports in out in America, put out these annual reports, and we counted over and over again how many women artists are in this gallery and museums, and that's when we did one of the first posters was,
And
Well,
which
yeah,
poster
there's a
was that?
Mark
I'm gonna see if I
poster,
can
yeah.
get it up
behind,
there.
it's okay. But how many, it's like, it says 0%, 1%, and that's how we got that information, was from actually counting.
So that's the report card.
Yeah. that's
If we
one
can
of
get
them.
that up, we have the report
And-
card as well. We're trying
Yeah,
to,
it's
we have a
the
lot
one
of
that's-
images to show, so we're
Yeah.
gonna try to get them. So there it is.
Oh, yeah, we would do these report cards. It was like, we'd score, one of the things that we did was we always named names and identified people. I mean, that was, you haven't talked about our anonymity yet, but
Yeah.
a part of it was to keep the message, to put the message out. But also it was because, to also protect ourselves, because, there could be retaliation in the face of,
That's what the masks
being-
are for.
naming names.
And we didn't want it to be about us or our careers or who we were. We wanted it to be about the information we put out.
So you're just trying to bring awareness
Yeah.
to everything. So the
Not
masks
about-
just generalize everybody,
Yeah.
and like you said, retaliation, because
Yeah.
you never know. And how do we come up with the names? So, Romaine.
Okay, I came up with the name Romaine Brooks because at the time I was probably the only out lesbian in the group, which is kind of rare. But anyway, that was what was true then. And Romaine Brooks was a fabulous portrait painter, American who lived in Paris in the 20s and 30s, painted gorgeous paintings, and often of very butch-looking women, or like these, really cool. It was kind of the lesbian demi-monde of Paris, and she was so, I don't know, I just loved her work, and we did this thing of taking on the names of dead women artists to make sure that to resurrect the reputations of all these forgotten women artists. I mean, the thing that we did is that we drew attention to something that everybody, it's a common thing. The whole idea of looking at where women have been left out of history is normal now, but we were the first people to
It's
bring
not
this
that
to
normal
people's
now, because
attention.
I have statistics. We'll get into that. But you're bringing up the consciousness to the art world.
Romaine Brooks was an undervalued artist, a wonderful artist, so I wanted to bring her into
Yeah.
the conversation.
And Alice Neal.
I picked Alice Neal. I mean, she's a fantastic artist. I think she should be known the way Van Gogh is known. She's, I've seen a retrospective it was fabulous. Anyway, I picked her name because I actually was in a show with her and I met her, which was it's just great.
Oh, you
It
did
was
meet her.
Yeah, it was a show called, it was at the Whitney Museum downtown, and it was a show called Portraits on a Human Scale. And they paired me with her in a room. They had all sections and rooms. And she was there, and she was just walking up and down. She's smoking a cigarette. She's going, and and the guard comes by and says, "You're not allowed. You can't smoke in here. You gotta." She said, "Oh, fuck you!" And she kept smoking this. She was just fabulous. And then that was in 1984 or 80. The show was in 83, I think. She passed away in 84. So in 85, we took the names of deceased women artists to keep them alive. And that's why that was when I took her name.
And Romaine, you come in later. Alice starts in 1985 when the Guerrilla Girls form, and you come in how many years later?
About 1988.
1988.
Yeah.
All right. Some statistics here. So when you start, it's 3% of women are in museums, right?
Oh, I think it was worse than that.
There's less than that.
Yeah.
There's not much more now.
Yeah.
I hate to tell you.
Yeah.
Right now, there is 11% of women in museums.
It's gotten better. but,
Up to
it's a backlash.
14.9 in exhibitions, but
Yeah.
as in their acquisitions, is only 11%. And that's an increase because of the Me Too movement. It has gone down since the Me Too movement has lessened.
Yeah.
And it is the same with people of color. It only used to be, now it is 2.2% of acquisitions, 6.3% of exhibitions in the this is in the United States. And it would, because of the Black Lives Matter movement, it also increased, and then it decreased again because the movement has sort of settled down because we have so much more going on these days. So has it really gotten much better? Because it seems to me that it's still filled with a lot of white men.
I think we need another report card, number one.
Yeah, I think we
But
should do another
no,
report card
yeah.
with the newer galleries.
It's the backlash. I think it's gone a little backwards, which sometimes that's how it can
I think it got
move.
better for a while, and now it's gone backwards again. But what happens is you have a certain number of women artists who will break through and suddenly get, have really high prices at auctions, and they can say, well, yeah, there's this, that, and the other person. So you have like you sort of have the tokenism argument, that, so there are women, you can say, oh, well, these women are doing better, but still, it's a very small percentage of the whole number of women artists and how they should be represented.
But
and
change
seen.
kind of happens. It's not so linear necessarily.
Correct.
We wish it would be. We wish it would be better, faster. But it goes like this, and it's like the back stitch. And then it goes back. But hopefully it's shifted better than it was when we started. But it's got
Yeah, but
definitely
some
backlash.
things never change, because I'm looking, I have a lot of images up here of Guerrilla Girls posters that have been plastered all over Manhattan in the 80s and the 90s, and the Guerrilla Girls still do exist. These are two former Guerrilla Girls. The Guerrilla Girls still do exist, and I did invite Frida Kahlo to be on our show, who still leads the Guerrilla Girls. She could not be here. But they still are very important in the art world, and they were very big calm activists. There was no violence going on in these. They're very peaceful demonstrations. So can we bring up, because I don't know if I was going to bring this one up, but since we're talking about women, let's bring up that Republican poster. And I'm not talking politics, all right? I'm just talking about time. And here we are. This is from the 1980s.
Very depressing when you think that this is, 40 years, 35 years old, and really, what's changed?
And nothing much has changed. I just found, because when I came across this poster, which I found today, because we had a nice meeting today going over all the posters, and a bunch of these posters are for sale and signed after the show. This one really caught my eye, because it just, as even when we were discussing earlier with the young men in the back, that, like, look at this. This is, it could have been made yesterday. I just found that interesting, but we're not getting into politics here. We're going to steer away from that, because then we'd be here, and I'll never leave. So I'll just keep on going. But there's some things that are really interesting, like we have the Gorillas Hits list, which has galleries that backed women. And one of my panelists, Catherine Markel, is on this list. She was one of my first panelists from my first show. So she takes on used to take on mostly female artists. As an art dealer myself, my roster is about 80% women. So I do show a lot of women artists. But this is great. And we have one, and this is I find very exciting, the Exposed, if we can find that one. Because this has a lot of hidden names on it. I see, and this is exciting. On this list is Stephanie Brody Letterman, who is one of my favorite artists, and she lives right here in East Hampton. And I do have a quote from her, because I said, I didn't know you were a Guerrilla Girl, either did she, apparently. She said she doesn't remember going to meetings, but she worked on Heresies?
Yeah.
A Women's Forward Thinking Journal. And she said her name has appeared on 7 posters, but she goes, I was definitely out there making art and being adamant about it being seen. On this list, too, is Daria Deshik, who passed away a few years ago, Caroline Schneeman, one of my favorite artists, Jenny Holzer, Audrey Flack, who just passed, Jennifer Bartlett, Cindy Sherman. These are all women artists who contributed to the Guerrilla Girls movement, but never were actual Guerrilla Girls. The Guerrilla Girls remain about between 50 and 60. Guerrilla Girls in total over the years.
We made this poster, well, it was in and out, but more or less, yeah.
More or less, yeah.
But we made this poster because we kept getting asked, how many of the Guerrilla Girls, is this one a Guerrilla? So we kind of got tired of having to deal with that question, which was not the
But
point.
people wanted to know
Also,
who you
people
were
came
as
in
well.
and
Yeah,
out.
so what we did was we asked women artists that we know who were supportive. We sent them a letter asking would they be interested in being listed on this faux,
Wish my
list.
name was on that list.
Yeah, and so they said yes, so that's why we put this Identities Exposed but they're not necessarily Guerrilla Girls on there.
Yeah, they're
Some
not
may-
Guerrilla Girls, but they supported the Guerrilla
Yes.
Girls, and they were women who felt the disadvantages of being a woman in the arts.
Yeah.
And people of color, let's not forget that. There's also people of color. And it's interesting when I was reading about people of color in the art world that for African American artists in general, the only one that's the king of everything is Basquiat. You know, there's Lawrence Jacobs, there's older ones from the past, but more current is he's the leader of all Black American artists, is Basquiat. Which my friend used to date him. I got stories for that, but we can't go into that here because it's not about him. But I got really good stories.
So weird too to call anybody the leader of anything.
But that's what, when I was doing my research, they said he's like the leader of all this, and we know he's
Right.
the most
leader-
expensive
no,
painter
that's crazy.
sold
Well,
yet.
what's a questionable, whatever that means.
Yeah,
but
and that's
we
the
know
question,
that.
like we were saying backstage, how do you compare a Rembrandt to a
Right.
Picasso? I mean, it's just a matter of taste and time and taste and statements. Because all the artists are always, at least most artists I know, are trying to make a statement. So, as a Guerrilla Girl, I mean, you do have posters. If we could bring up the Whitney poster, the Guerrilla Girls does have shows. You do have a lot of shows. But how was it for you, and we don't want to reveal your identity, obviously, but how it was for you as an artist to show your work separately from the Guerrilla Girls?
Well, I feel like being a Guerrilla Girl gave me such a consciousness and power in terms of like understanding the art world. And so I don't think it directly affected my own work, just only in the sense of helping define myself as a woman artist and understanding the situation for women artists. But in a way, it empowered us. It's been a very empowering experience. And also, we did a lot of gigs. Alice Neal and I did a bunch of gigs together, and we traveled all around the world. I've been to Australia, Germany, Australia, and Austria, and all these different places. And when we'd get off the plane, we'd get into these situations, these lectures, and we were like mobbed, because I felt like sometimes like we were like, rock stars, because women were so eager to hear our message.
And
It was
needing
so
of it.
they were so thirsty for this information.
Yeah. I did
Because
a gig in
they were so isolated. These women artists, remember, in Australia, were like, they couldn't believe it. And they were so, it was a message that was so important and so empowering. And we were just the deliverers of that message. So that,
I just did a gig in Portugal last year, and afterwards, the young women were coming up and crying. They made me cry. They were so inspired. It really did affect them. I don't think, though, but being a Guerrilla Girl, my work was always separate from being a Guerrilla Girl. It didn't help my career or hinder it, maybe took time away from things, but
But maybe like Romaine, it empowered you more to just go out there. You had felt more empowered because you knew that this was, there was activism behind
well,
this
I felt
issue.
more empowered, but or that what we were doing was important and necessary, but it didn't affect my work at all or anything. But we called ourselves the conscience of the art world, and all we wanted to do was bring up the point that there's a problem.
Yeah.
That was the mission, and then it snowballed, in a way that
I mean,
we
we
realized
wanted
how much was
to
needed.
make women not to, artists feeling so isolated, but you're part of a community. Being part of Guerrilla Girls, being part of a community of Guerrilla Girls too, but the message it becomes like, you're not a lonely woman artist. You've got all these, peers, and you've got this thing that brings you all together as you understand the problems.
And we were kind of tight-knit community. We all knew each other. We were showing or not, but it was definitely, as Romaine was saying,
So you were all
a way
friends?
to
You all-
reach out to people who felt more isolated, especially. That's how I.
So were you all friends? The beginning 7 women, were you all friends?
Yeah, we basically all knew each other.
And then how did you invite other people in?
Oh, we'd have a lot of discussion about who we thought would work or not, and there was a lot of people who had quite big celebrity names that we didn't think would fit because it was more about when we became popular that they wanted to be part of it. It was a long discussion, that. We were
Because you're
very
trying
kind
to
of
remain
careful about it.
anonymous and yeah.
I think
Also, there was work. I mean, as Guerrilla Girls, we went to meetings. We had to think of ideas for posters. There was postering, getting up in the middle of the night. our loft was right close to Soho at the time, and so often our loft was the headquarters, like 2 o'clock in the morning. You'd be in a snowstorm, you'd get out in the car, you'd be putting, and then the next morning, everybody'd say, "Oh my God, you see the new Guerrilla Girl poster?" You know, and
I
that was so,
remember.
it became kind of this whole activity that was wonderful.
Yeah, I remember that because I worked down in the East Village in the Soho area back when I was younger, and I used to do a lot of window displays, and I remember seeing them all over, as well as like the same-o, when Basquiat started doing the same-o things. It was around that same era when graffiti art and plastering of posters was a real, I mean, it's still a big thing. How do you feel about some of the activists of today? Like the people, it was about oil, and this has happened fairly recently, that they threw tomato soup all over the Vincent van Gogh painting.
Well,
Or what, someone else glued themselves to another painting, crazy glued them. Really, I mean, you're stuck to the painting. The only one's going to get hurt from that is yourself. How do you feel about that type of activism?
well, I feel like the defacing paintings in museums does not seem to have, it seems to have a negative impact. I don't really understand. I guess it draws attention to the problems, but I'm not sure that it's very effective.
But
yeah, I think it's
funny.
the wrong target.
Yeah, because I knew about the tomato soup on the Van Gogh, but I never knew it was about oil.
Yeah.
So it was sort of pointless. I mean,
Well, Guernica was
Also, you're
was,
directing it.
graffitied many years ago. And
Oh, yeah,
Tony
yeah, yeah.
Strapazzi became
House
an
was there.
art dealer. But no, I don't understand. It doesn't really seem to be the target that should.
because your activism was more getting the word across. Because I've seen a lot of the videos. I do my research before I do these shows. And you're basically standing outside museums, just letting people aware of it, right? You're just letting people who are walking aware of the situation. And did you
Well, I
both
think
do
that
that?
we had a very simple message, and I think like Black Lives Matter, it's a simple message. You know, it's like, I'm sure some of the environmental stuff, I don't understand. It's like if you're putting paint on paintings, you know, messing up paintings in museums, is this for the rich? Who's it for? Who's the audience?
Yeah,
you know?
I
Yeah,
don't
no, it's
understand
just
it.
not.
Yeah, it's totally not my
I
thing.
don't think.
But when you stopped people outside museums and you explained, did they listen?
What do you
Did they
mean
not
stop?
care?
Stop you people. We mostly use the posters.
Yeah, but I've seen I've seen a few things, like you have like a billboard outside or like a moving type of stand that had posters and people and the gorillas talking to crowds outside of like the Met and MoMA and all those museums. I'm wondering what the reaction was to you going up to them in a gorilla mask first of all and talking to them. What was their reaction? Did they understand the message? Did they not care about the message? Did they?
I don't remember a lot of activities doing that. I mean, you know, actually the posts that we're showing, it's mostly from 1985 to 2000 when the girls were most active.
Yes.
So there's a, and the website that's up now is 2 legit girls, but they've broken, you know, it's not, doesn't represent the whole
gorilla
voice.
since the year
And,
2000.
yeah, and I think they were involved with more of that kind of action. I mean, I did some of those kind of actions, but
So the main group of the Guerrilla Girls are from 1985 to 2000 is when they're
Yeah,
at the peak. Two
which-
women continue the Guerrilla Girls, who is still Frida Kahlo being one of them. And I don't know.
Kathy Kolowitz is the other.
Yeah, I didn't know who that. And
Yeah.
So they're still running the organization,
They
and
don't, well, they've incorporated the name.
they incorporated the
And they,
organization.
you know, have their
But-
own website, and it doesn't necessarily represent what we did or what we all did as a group at all.
But
There's just
it's
2 of
important to
them.
know that there are many Guerrilla Girls. There are, you know, that I guess, you know, there's a whole band of Guerrilla Girls. It's not just Frida and
Right.
the ones that
Yeah.
are there
Right.
now.
There's
So-
a lot of Guerrilla Girls. And they all take on the names of passed away women artists, which I just find that fascinating. And I hear a story. I heard a story about bananas.
No, yeah.
Let's hear the story.
Alice Neal's story about the famous story about the bananas.
Oh,
Your banana
my
story.
banana story?
Yeah,
Oh,
your banana
This was
awards.
The birth of the banana story. We were getting an award, me and another girl. It was a very prestigious, I don't know if you can hear me, award in Washington, D.C. And so we were single moms, and we were really excited about being able to have a day or 2 off. Where they put us up in a great hotel where in the auditorium where they were doing all the ceremonies for. It was 7 women who've done, we were the only art-related group, but it was 7 other women who were being awarded. And we were so happy, we couldn't eat with them because we had masks, so we couldn't be in the room with them. So in our room, we were drinking, martinis and jumping on the bed, having a great old time. And then we hear a knock on the door, and they say, "We're ready for you." So we go downstairs, and we go into this big room. It's like hundreds of people eating at a dinner, and the award ceremony's going on. And we're listening to a couple of the women who did these incredible, amazing things in the world. And I was so moved and inspired by what they were saying. My God, this is fabulous. I'm so proud to be in the presence of what the hell, oh my God. And then I realized, I turned to the other girl and I said, "We're supposed to have a speech." And we had nothing prepared because they were all talking so eloquently and wonderfully. And so I called the waiter over and I said, "Please, can you get us as many bananas as you can and Sharpie?" So he came with a bunch of bananas, and I signed him. That's where the hugs and kisses started, and the banana symbol, which we use. And we went upstage, and I took the banana, and I just awarded all the people who were awarded, the awardees and the waters, and just then took all the bananas and just threw them into the audience. We can't do that now because somebody's eye could get poked out.
Oh, yes, we can. Yes, we can do it now.
Now we can, today.
And I
we
think
can.
we're going to.
Yeah, so that was the birth of, in a panic, we were able to come up with a whole routine. Oh, can we do it now?
You can do it now.
Oh, how much fun. This is so safe. This is the way to do it. I'm having flashbacks.
So you
Okay.
can toss them at the audience.
Toss them out. These aren't real bananas, so they won't hurt. But that's what we did, and that was the birth of the banana.
She's got the, and then I got a bunch in bags. For the people who don't grab a banana, we have some for you, so don't worry.
So this became the Banana Award, the Guerrilla Girl
So
Award.
these are signed bananas from the Guerrilla Girls.
Oh, I know. I'm having more fun than they are. Everyone get one?
We have some in the bags for those that you did not grab a banana. I do have some for you, so you all will go home with a signed banana from the Guerrilla Girls. Can't find my list of questions here. Let's move on to the Banana Award. Okay, beyond the art, have you ever moved into other subjects?
Well, we have. We've gone into, during the Iraq War, we did posters. We definitely have dealt with Jesse Holmes, abortion. I mean, the Republican posters that we did, one was for Jesse Holmes and one was, there's another Republican poster. So we definitely went into anything, abortion, and all the Republican attacks on health care, and
Yeah.
so we did. We veered into that. That was pretty much what. Were there other ones? I think it was
real decision making. A lot of discussion about the fact should we just be talking about the art world, but the Gulf War was happening, and it was just too pressing not to deal with what was happening elsewhere in the world, because that affects everybody, including artists and art. So that's when we decided. Okay, it was a hard decision, but we decided to branch out. And it started with the Gulf War posters.
because the real world does impact the art world. So we wanted to, and it was part of our activism too.
Yeah.
Do you do any activism now, without the gorilla masks or with the masks?
I vote.
Oh, that's activism
yeah.
enough.
No, I mean
right?
more than that. No, I mean probably just we both have taught a lot. And I think that the principles and ideas of the what we learned as Guerrilla Girls and what the kind of message that have, I think is totally part of when I teach and when we meet young people, that to understand the inequality, and that that you have to, that you have to understand that institutional, that it's harder for women artists to get into galleries, to get into museums. We have the stuff to prove it. It's gotten better. But it's a constant fight. It's still, the numbers have not changed all that much.
No, they
and
haven't. And
parents
I was
and-
shocked when I researched the numbers that they haven't really changed all that much since 1985.
And most of it has to do with the market. I mean, it's like these they need to keep up the reputation of certain, white male artists, and there's all that money invested in them, and they want to keep that up, and so then it becomes a sort of cycle. I mean, it's taken a really long time for women artists to start getting huge, sales at auctions. It's beginning to happen, but
Beginning. but
Yeah,
it's
the
not
beginning.
just,
Yeah, because I know Lee
not there
Krasser,
yet.
she's doing a little
Yeah.
bit better, not as well as Jackson.
But-
But yeah, I brought this up in the last show we had. When I went to college and I got the H.W. Jansen art history book, that big denim book that was your book that you studied art history from.
No women.
And there was no women.
No women.
And this is in the 80s. There's no women, and Frida Kahlo, Georgia O'Keeffe are not
Right.
in it.
No women.
But then I went to school for postmodern art theory and criticism, so then I learned more because I had a great, great mentor when I went. And that's when I started learning about the Caroline Schneemans of the world and all these fantastic women that do the feminism movement. There's a few feminism movements,
really,
but they started.
Look at the ages of women who are having women exhibitions at major museums. It's 80 is young. For, women. It's like women in their 80s, 90s are
to be
dead.
dead.
That's basically
one of our
that's when you're those are the kind of statistics for women artists in museums,
But-
major galleries.
But we're talking about being activism. I think being a parent, being a teacher, spreading that kind of word, and just living your life in a way that you share ideas in that way. And that's why we've been discussing more about when we're teaching college or teaching anything, they'll have a student will come up and say, "Oh, we're learning about this group called the Guerrilla Girls in our feminist study class. You know anything about them?" And at this point, it feels, we think, counteractive not to be able to really share the stories, the personal stories, because history is really remembered and preserved by our personal stories. So we've been discussing being anonymous or not anymore. And most of us are thinking it's time to really talk about what we did and learn and spread it in a different way.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with that. Can we get the naked picture up here? It's just the name of the thing. Calm down, people. It's just the name of the slide we're going to go. So this is how women get on the walls of museums.
And it's comment about the shape of it, because this is a rectangle, because it was for a bus poster. This was on a bus.
Yeah, and it's, I don't know the exact slogan, how does a woman get on the walls of a museum? She has to be naked, right?
Also,
Painted by a man.
I just want to make a point. You see this, that she's holding this thing in her hand?
Yeah.
Well, it was eventually pulled off the bus because I thought it was a penis.
Penis, yeah. But it was a microphone.
It looks like a microphone
Yeah.
to me. So we do have this poster for sale outside too. Not that large. It'll fit in your house. So I always found that very interesting. That's the way a woman gets seen gets to hang on the walls of a museum. She has to basically be nude and in a painting. I can't remember my first. Believe it or not, we were just talking about this backstage. The first women retrospective that I remember seeing is Artemisia Gentileschi, which if I was a Guerrilla Girl, I would take on her name. But you said it's already taken. So that would be me. I remember being blown away and learning her story. I remember the years that she painted, but she was a very good painter, and she wasn't allowed to be seen because she was a female. She painted better than her father, who's a very famous painter. And do you know more about her story, her backstory?
Her father was an artist, and she was raped.
By her father's friend.
Yeah. And that
Yeah.
was, and then she did these the painting of the Holofernes, where
Yeah.
the woman's cutting the head off.
Cutting off the
They're
head.
really violent, and it really has to do with, and it strengthens the woman. She's like really powerful, and it must have to do with this, I don't know, her whole history.
That painting was in the retrospective that I saw of hers, which I found interesting that she was one of the best painters around, and she was not allowed to show her work just because the fact that she was a female.
Yeah.
This is going way back in time. But that's our first retrospective. I don't even remember seeing, every time I go, it's a retrospective of a man
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah.
that I can remember anyway. Anybody remember seeing any retrospectives of women in museums?
Well, Alice Neal had a show.
Alice Neal, but like
There was a
usually
big
like
Alice
it's
Neal
Monet
show. I mean,
and
you do
Matisse.
see them, but she was dead.
Who? I'm sorry.
She's dead.
Yeah, well, they have to be dead, like the Guerrilla Girls'
I'm
names.
not bringing up any.
But a living artist, yeah. Artemis Gentileschi was dead. I mean, I don't recall any. I mean, maybe small museums out here. They did an April Gornick one and stuff like that, but I'm talking places like the Met and
At the
like
Met, the big major
big
ones, yeah.
museums. Louise Bourgeois, yes, oh, she's wonderful. I have a spider of hers, a tiny little one. Yeah, but she didn't die all that long ago. Audrey Flack, she just passed away. Oh, nice. And she just came out with a book not that long ago. Yeah, right before because she passed away a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, recently, yeah.
Yeah, very recently. Any questions for the Guerrilla Girls? Anything you want to hear, a question that relates to them in their day between 1985 and 2000, or anything that can relate to activism in any way? I see a hand back there. It's hard to see the audience. Go ahead.
I can't hear. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the problem that we've been having in the art world is that you're seeing less than half the picture. Is because most of the collectors, most of the dealers were white men, most of the collectors were white men, most of the writers and the curators and the critics were white men, and they had a specific way, and it's their specific vision, and were attracted to certain things, which is legit, but it was limited. It was a limited point of view. So there are more women dealers and there are more women collectors, but economics plays a large part in empowering women to, it's a long-seated question and dilemma about women having not only power, being empowered, but psychologically being empowered too. So eventually it will, what's that? Yeah. So I think a lot of it happened. Right.
The Museum of Modern Art was founded by women.
Yeah. The Guggenheim, Peggy Guggenheim.
Well, I know the Guggenheim. Peggy doesn't have anything to do with the Guggenheim
No.
Museum in the city. No. Well, then we have Peggy Guggenheim in Venice having our own museum there. She was very influential. Yeah. Oh. Do you have a? You have a microphone? Yeah, we have a microphone. So because we can barely hear up here.
A little louder.
Yeah.
What's
There
happening
you
right, ooh, I guess it's working. What is
Gotcha.
happening right now is there is a very huge change for black artists, where black artists are, whether they're really good artists or mediocre, there is a real change where black artists are getting a tremendous amount of attention.
The one
I think that's a market correction. You know, I think that it's gonna. I bet it's not gonna last all that long. I'm sure.
No, but that is
I have a
what's
feeling
happening now.
This is kind of like a fad. I'm sure that it's a few of those artists will emerge and do well on it, but I think it's like a moment. You know, it's like a moment. It's a historical moment that's probably going to recede.
Style and a fad.
What? I mean, that's the way it is. You know,
it peaked in
it's just the
2015.
way women's rights are being rolled back. I'm sure that the market for black artists will also roll back.
Yeah, it says the black market artist, The black artist market peaked in 2015 by over 200%, and then it dropped off significantly. So those are just some statistics.
And women had a short heyday too.
Yeah, the women, they didn't peak that much though.
Mm.
They peaked 200%, and that was during the Black Lives Matter, which starts in 2014. 2015 is when that all starts peaking. And they're saying now it's declining again, besides Basquiat. And I can't remember the name of the artist who painted Obama's portrait.
Can do Wyler?
Yeah, he does very well.
Mm.
They're amazing paintings. But yeah, so it goes up and down like everything. It's not linear. Nick Cave, with the sound suit.
Well, Kelly James Marshall's fantastic. He's I mean, there's some wonderful black artists.
Mm.
Yeah. As well as it should be.
Yeah.
Oh, they should be, yeah.
You know, but the thing that's odd is we're talking about this even in this conversation. I don't understand why people are called female artists or black artists or Asian artists or anything. Why aren't people just called artists?
Yeah.
'Cause we're not
Wouldn't that
there
be
yet.
nice?
We're not there yet.
Not the time yet. That would be a great world, wouldn't it? But we're not there yet.
Any other questions?
Any artists in the audience? Besides, well, I know there are a few.
I see a few. So, any artists? I see. One, two, three. It's hard to see it in the audience. I can't see over there. It's dark. You only can sort of see the front row here. Any questions? There has to be more questions to the Guerrilla Girls. No? Do we ever what?
Well, I'm here.
I can hear.
Do you ever see it changing?
Well, we have seen some change, but it's just glacial. It's so slow. It's because it's really the way the structure is. I mean, it's the patriarchy. It's going to take a long time for things to change. But I think the fact is that the conversation has begun, and that's what the Guerrilla Girls did. They brought it. They made the discussion. They made it all apparent. But people don't. You know, there's so many other factors. There's the economy. There's museum boards that want to support certain artists, and it's
has
a
to do with the
structural
boards,
problem
yeah.
too.
Has a lot to do with the boards on the museum, what goes into the museums.
Do you think being anonymous was the right tactic?
Yes.
Did it
at the
work?
time, definitely. It was so necessary to be anonymous back then, because we didn't want to be focused on who we were. A lot of us were very visible in the art world, and it also added to the mystique and the power of the message. Now I don't think so. Now I think it's time to, talk about the real personal stories, especially when we have students who are asking, and so it's different now. I think, and most of us feel that way too, because history, we want to preserve the history and not let it just diminish, and history is preserved better with names and personal stories. And we did what we did our job. I think we did, so what's happening now is just, I think it should be younger generation of men and women, neo-feminism involving young men too. They should be now picking up the banner.
I think the guys in the back that work here are into it, so
They're
I know that.
neo-feminists,
That's good.
yeah.
They're nice young men. So.
Can you pull up two posters? One is the advantages poster, and also the half.
Yeah, advantages,
Those
if you
are
could pull
two
that one
really-
up, please.
Those are really funny, and I mean, one's really funny and one's just very important.
Right, they'll pull them up.
So
All right, I think it's counteractive now to be
take a moment
anonymous.
to read this. This is great.
Yeah, take a moment to read that. I have that on a bag.
This hasn't changed much either.
No, this has not changed. This is like
Yeah. We worked hard on this poster. This was one of the
seeing your ideas live on in the work
Knowing
of
your
others.
career might pick up after you're 80.
Oh, yeah, or dead. But it's true.
Having to smoke on the big cigars.
But that was reference to the Italian painters.
Well, the thing is, we also tried to be funny and like engage people that way, in terms of being activists, like to really make it fun and like interesting and the whole when looking at this also it's so funny. I mean, it was so pre-computers, paper posters that we put on night and with wheat paste. It's kind of like ancient technology.
How much is advanced? There's no computer. We had a count.
Yeah, I remember working with the Letcher sets. And the half picture,
The other half, only half. This is a wonderful poster.
Oh, this poster, we usually worked as a group and made posters, but for some reason, I was on the subway.
put the mic on.
I was on the subway when I thought of this one. It just came to me, the whole visual, and that was where we usually worked over and over on things, but I came with the idea, sketched it out, and we ran it. But it's talking about the fact that there's a limited perspective of what we see in the art world because of the people who are in power, the privileged group of people who are in power who have their own vision, which is valid, but it's not everybody's vision. There's so many artists that never get seen because their work is not understood, because it's not the experience of the people who have the power to buy it, show it, curate it, and write about it. So it's it's a cycle. So that was where that came from.
Jerry, right here. Wherever the mic's going.
I don't, Chet, I don't really have a question, but an observation, because this week on public television, they had 3 or 4 artists, and one of them was the Guerrilla Girls, and I didn't really know anything about the Guerrilla Girls other than what Karen had set up here tonight, and it was a documentary on the Guerrilla Girls, a very short one, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I don't know if you were aware of it.
Well, was it made? When was it made? Do you
When
know?
was it made?
What was the year? When was
I
it
don't,
made?
I don't know. I didn't really check at
I
the
don't
end.
know. It
Yeah.
might be a documentary that the 2 girls who incorporated the name and broke off from
Yeah.
the group.
No, yeah, I didn't know
created.
if you women were in it or not. I didn't,
Yeah.
you couldn't tell.
Curious
So.
to know, see it.
Okay.
Art 21.
Hmm.
Here comes with the mic.
Thanks. I'm just wanted to be one of the voices that's endorsing the idea of identifying yourselves and telling your stories. So I think it's really powerful to, I mean, it's mythic proportions now, and now that now that you're established and alive and well and to tell your stories, I think it would be great if that entered, demystified your identities. But also, I was wondering how you felt about, I don't know if you, I also, along with Karen, was in the art scene sort of in the 80s, and I don't know if you know 4 Walls in Brooklyn, but there were these panels, and I can remember, it's just ringing in my head, one woman artist saying, I don't want to be known as a woman artist, I want to be known as an artist. And there's this sort of sense of being part of the boys club, like you have to behave. And what I love so much about what you've done is you didn't behave. You got out there and said, this is wrong and needs to be corrected. And so I applaud you for that.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
It did come from it came from the guts, and that's what always works. But it's interesting what you said about identities being exposed, because I think it is the real way to keep history alive and real and honest. You know, I mean, people get confused about who the Guerrilla Girls are now, and it's important that we share our stories. We're not going to be here that much longer, so.
There was a question in the back on the other side.
Hi, I came in just a few minutes late, and maybe you've already discussed this, but where did the idea of wearing the mask come up, and how did you come up with the name? Was that a whole group of people or just a couple people? How did it start?
Well,
You were there in the beginning, so.
yeah, I was in the beginning, so we didn't have a name at that point. This was 1985. It was the first meeting. It was 7 founding members, but I was in the first meeting. It was just a few of us, that really, a handful more. And we didn't know what, we were clueless. We just knew that we were disgusted, and we couldn't not say anything anymore. That's where it stemmed from. But then I think we kind of realized we wanted to have a certain look that was consistent in terms of the press the type, and we wanted to be humorous, and wanted feminism to be sexy again, because that had a bad rap. You know what feminism was like a dirty word. And we wanted to kind of restore that sensibility too. And the masks came because we wanted, it's a powerful, scary looking thing. So I think it helped, especially mine. It's all skanky. This is from 1985. It's turning gray naturally. I didn't do a damn thing. There it
It's
is.
actually going gray a bit.
But, and they're uncomfortable as hell. But it was a way to conceal our identity and get attention. It was a visual, way of getting attention and making a point. And the name came from gorilla.
So the pun, it was like the gorilla and the gorilla. They
Yeah.
kind of go together. The gorilla.
Yeah.
If you weren't a
warrior, and then
gorilla,
the mask came after.
Yeah. I
if
think
you
we
weren't a
went-
gorilla, what would you be? What would you want to be? What kind of man would you be? Want to be a kitty
I
cat?
think we considered different animals at one point.
Right? Would it be something really cutesy?
The
Little
masks
panda.
are better now. The first time I went on a gig with a mask, I just remember I went to, it was University of Boulder, and the art critic Lucy Lepard was interviewing another Guerrilla Girl and I for this college radio station, and I was just sweating under the mask. It was like, so there are
Yeah, they're
ups and downs about wearing the mask.
Yeah, but some of the girls loved
This
it. They
is
would
much better.
when they put a mask on.
well,
but
it's like
I
wearing a
felt
wig.
worse.
Yeah, you become a different
And
person.
some good girls wore gloves too. They had like the whole thing.
Interesting.
I'd
yeah.
rather have the mask off.
Just yeah. I mean, I get why you wear gorillas because of the Guerrilla Girls.
Yeah.
Okay. This back here. Then we'll go back to Sue. The microphone has to come out because this is going to be a podcast.
Hi, can you hear? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I just have one comment to make about something you were all talking about. In the 70s, I was part of the Mother Collective of Heresies magazine for art and politics, speaking of Lucy Lepard, who was very involved. And at these early meetings, first we would go to different lofts. We would go to people's different places. And I initially, embarrassingly enough, was one of those people who said, well, why can't we all just be, why do we have to say women? Why can't it just be, we're artists and everything? I learned something so significant from working with Heresies. The reality hit so clearly when it said, look, it's like the Black Power movement in those days, in the 60s and early 70s. We need to have a voice, a unified voice, to fight against, so everybody will hear that one voice. Not 100 different voices, not, oh, we're this, I'm that, one. And then it can open up to this whole other dialogue and different, artists taking on different roles. And it was so true because people heard us. They got it. And the magazine was really, I mean, I guess you know it, but there are so many issues, and it went global. It was it was art and politics, not just in the art world. It became in the world itself, how you know, gay rights, lesbian rights were infringed on, all over, you know, all different subjects. And it was really fascinating. And I guess I'm just bringing this up because when we do say things like, well, why can't we just call ourselves artists? Well, that is not the given. That is not how it's been. So you've got to be an iconoclast and bond together to be heard. Then things can open up more. That's just my thing.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we get there.
Sadly.
If I may. So, like, sort of following that, I'm just really curious about sort of the mechanics now of how the Guerrilla Girls operate. It sounds like, I mean, I have the feeling that Alice Neal would take her mask off right now if it were, you know, individual decisions, but it sounds like you all want to reach consensus before, you know, you make a change like that. And then you had mentioned there were two women that were part of Guerrilla Girls that sort of were doing their own thing. So I was just curious if you could speak for a second about, you know, how it's functioning now. Do you meet regularly? Is it, do you have plans for the next activist, you know, something to do?
Do you want to answer
Yeah.
this one? Yeah.
Actually, we've been meeting again, hanging out at my place, meeting with a bunch of girls, talking about creating this a legacy where women artists are, or artists that could expand, where when you, after you die, that your work is taken care of and rotated, maybe in different museums. And so we have a lot of ideas about things like that we want to do. And most of us want to expose our identities too, for the reasons that you were saying also. So, but we're getting older and we want to do our work, and we want to recruit younger people. And I think what's happening now in the, what we're seeing now on the website is maybe there needs to be a different perspective and vision on how to handle actions and things to make change. I mean, you have access to the internet and computers. So I think this is a...
I mean, I think that we succeeded in getting the message out, and it's almost up to the younger generations of artists to keep the pressure on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like the ideas are out there. What we did was we made them part of the dialogue. It's like they were not, we articulated it. We got the message out. The message is out. Now it's up to, you know, younger artists, women artists. Well, I mean,
Yeah, I think
artists of
it's-
color to keep on going. But it's
Yeah.
like they have the message now. They have the information. They can. They
Yeah,
can
better
figure
tools,
out
too.
their own statistics. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like we've created a template in a lot of ways for
I-
that kind of
yeah.
behavior.
I think the Guerrilla Girls should retire in a way and transform with the same sensibility and ideas and desires and passion about what's going on. Doesn't have to be just even the art world, but that it should go on in, you know, with your voice and different people's.
So you both have not been in the Guerrilla Girls since about the year 2000, give or take. Is
There's
when
no there's only
there's two left
There's
from the year
only
2000
two who
to
are
now.
doing what they do with the website, and they're
Yeah,
not
it's just a
considered.
website thing, so
It's not representative of what we.
What you've
what we
done,
had done,
between in
which- Yeah.
those years.
Yeah.
I'm going to once again promote my book. I'm going to ask you some questions from it. See how you feel. Collaboration. Working with artists can expand your horizons. How do you feel about that?
Collaboration?
And about when you work with other artists, how you can expand your horizons. Do you agree, disagree?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
It's important. I think it's very important for artists to collaborate. I really do. And you learn from other artists. I mean, you do, and it's always should be learning.
Really, I mean, collaboration is how we worked anyway. That's how all the posters got
Yeah,
the
so this was
designs
all
and
exciting and-
all our work was collaborative.
And
Yeah.
dedication. You need 110% to
Yeah,
do this
yeah,
type of
yeah,
work, right?
yeah.
It's any artist.
And the
It's-
Guerrilla Girls had a very successful, most collaborations don't last that as long as we did. We had a very
you guys
successful
last a
long
very
run.
long time.
It's very energizing, and
Yeah, then the express, don't give up. The journey is worth it. How do you feel about that in the arts, right? I mean, I think you guys have made a big impression. Sue and I know, because we used to be in the East Village and all those areas back then, so I remember you guys very, very well from the 80s, even though I was only about 2 years old back then. Any other questions? One in the back. Oh, we got a microphone for you this time.
I admire everything the Guerrilla Girls have done, but I think the story has been told, and tonight sort of completes it in a way, and you realize that one has to move into another way of looking at the problem, and that is that artists of color and women artists have to be given the opportunity to show their work in the best possible ways, that one has to strive towards establishing new museums to make that visible, and I think that things will change. One only has to see the extraordinary effect of the museum, the Black Museum in Washington, to see how things can be dramatically affected by new ways of dealing with the issues. The present is as we see it, but it's moribund. It's not creating anything that's going to change. One has to get to the people, to the collectors, to these immensely rich women who are in Cupertino and making the most astronomical amounts of money, and get them excited to get behind the women's movement and the exhibitions, and the same goes for the black community. You can't just always depend on these wonderful Guerrilla Girls sort of knocking on doors saying, wake up. It's not about that. It's about a bigger picture that has to be developed and created. And I think it can be done. It's just that the vision has to be there, and you have to have the team that can go out there and fight for it. I mean, when you think of how many fantastic women artists are recognized throughout the world today, it is amazing. I mean, you just need to see the number of artists in London, in Paris, in Italy, and in America, of course, who have benefited, I would imagine, from much of what Guerrilla Girls have always been fighting about. And so their work has to be encouraged by others. And,
Exactly. Exactly, that's the point.
and
Yeah.
aim
Yeah.
for bigger rewards.
amen.
Okay?
And these are the women who started it.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you all for coming. We're going to have a little, we have a question. Microphone over here. Sorry, it's just hard to see from all the blaring lights.
So what's the next Guerrilla Girls? I mean, it seems like we need some to advance ourselves in some way, shape, or form. So besides a gorilla, do you see what the next phase, the next coming is of this movement that was created so many years ago? It seems like we need another one. Any ideas besides the Brat?
You need a younger generation to start.
Well,
it.
younger artists, and also we did posters. That was our technology. There's now, you know, all these other technologies. There's TikTok, there's a million, I mean, they can take our ideas and make, you know, do it differently, do it digitally. I mean, there's just, there are all these platforms. I think that it's a question of taking that image, those ideas and spreading them in ways that people hear them and see them.
I've recruited, even though they don't know what it means, my students, male students, I teach at an all-boys school, and my son and all the young men we know, to be neo-feminists, which includes men and women. We need the boys on board too to support what we're saying.
But also
Really
you can start locally. You know, you can just start, get your friends together. That's how we started. You know, you figure what the problem is, and you get a group of people together, you articulate the problem, you figure out, you know, how you want to solve it and what kind of tactics you need, and that's kind of basically took that idea, and that's how we did the Guerrilla Girls. But you can do that with all kinds of problems.
Just use a different name.
Besides Swifties.
There's a blueprint. We did make a blueprint. So.
Thank you, and thank you for all you did, and continue to.
Any more questions?
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, we're going to meet you out in the hallway where the Guerrilla Girls will be signing posters that are for sale out there. My books are for sale out there, and whoever did not get a banana, let me know. I got some in bags. Thank you very much.